Hi guys, this is Kelly, and you'll notice I'm in a different background than I normally am. I am in my daughter's room filming in front of her bookshelf because everything's a little crazy this afternoon. Both girls are up from their nap, and since it's Sunday, my husband's hanging out with them, and we also have a visitor. My father-in-law is visiting, so it was just easier to kind of hide away in their room. So the lighting's a little different and everything's not like normal, but I really wanted to get this done this weekend so I could put out the video Monday morning. So here we are. And this is my mid-June wrap-up. I read 9 books so far in June. It's only been, 2 weeks? So I figured I better do a mid-month wrap-up instead of waiting till the end of the month, or else it would get a little uncontrollable. So that's why we're gonna do it now. So there are 2 of these books that I didn't rate, so I just decided that I would just show them to you and kind of give like a brief reason why I didn't rate them, and then we'll go into the ones I actually have stuff to say about. So the first one is A Series of Unfortunate Events, The Bad Beginning. I read this because I did an unfortunate book tag, and I never read any of these books, so I just read the first one in the series, and I didn't rate it because I didn't really love it, and I kind of feel with books that are meant for children and I'm not at the age where I'd really be into them, that it wasn't really fair for me to judge it, because there was nothing like technically wrong or offensive that I would feel like, oh, I need to like get this out there. So since it was just like whatever, you know, I'm not going to continue the series, I'm not going to like bash it or anything like that. It just wasn't my thing, so I'm not going to give it a rating. The other one I'm not going to rate is Embroideries by Marjane Satrapi. This is another graphic memoir. She was the one that wrote Persepolis, and the reason I'm not rating this is because it was really short, and I really love Persepolis, so when I saw this in my library I picked it up, and it was just short enough that I didn't really feel like there was any reason to rate it, because I might have given it a lower rating, but it's not bad. I mean, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't like interesting enough for me to like want to buy, or like for me to say a lot about. Like basically it's just one conversation. So this is like another kind of memoir, but basically what it is it's Marjane, and she's having afternoon tea with a bunch of women from her family, so her mother, her grandmother, aunts, family friends, and the ladies just sitting around talking about men and talking about sex and marriage, and it's entertaining. Especially as a married woman, it was an entertaining read, and obviously these women are all from a different culture. They are all Iranian, so it was interesting to hear from their point of views, and about arranged marriages, and about sex before marriage when you're in a different religion that doesn't approve of that, and just things like that, or reclaiming your virginity, stuff that that they discussed. So it was fun and entertaining, but it wasn't something I really wanted to rate, because I read this probably in an hour or maybe less. It was like super, super quick, because it's really just one conversation. So I would recommend reading it, but I didn't really know how to read it. Alright, so now we're going to get to the 7 books that I actually like read and rated. And like normal, I'm going to start with one of my favorites, kind of go to my least favorite, and then back up to my higher 5.5 stars again. So the first one that I really loved was Martian by Andy Weir. And this is a sci-fi about a man who is left on Mars during a mission, and how he, takes care of himself and what he's going to do by being alone. And I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I'm not really a sci-fi person, and there is a lot of technical science stuff in this, so it took me a little longer to read, and I kind of took a little break here and there, but not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I had to read a little slower to read the science parts. I know some people say that they skip over the science parts, but I really wanted to understand what he was talking about, so I took my time to really like read over the technical things and make sure I understood what he was doing before moving on. So it did take me a little longer, but I enjoyed every minute I was reading it. And this was also a buddy read with a bunch of people through the channel, Dane Reads, his channel. He put together a bunch of us to buddy read it, so we kind of were chatting during it, and that was a lot of fun. And I thought this movie, it is a movie, but I thought the book was really funny and smart and suspenseful. there's a lot that moves the plot along, which is kind of funny since it's just basically like one man. I mean, it's like Castaway on Mars, but the plot just drives and drives, and you stay involved with him, and there are some really intense scenes, like life or death kind of scenes, so like I stayed like focused on it when I was reading it, and it was nice the way the plot kept moving. The other thing I really liked about it was the main character's humor. He was just like had a really dry sense of humor, and he was hilarious. And since there was a lot of like tech stuff and some very mundane everyday things, because he's just like talking about what he does with his, you know, like when he goes to the bathroom and like how he feeds himself, like kind of monotonous things, but his humor makes all that stuff interesting to read. So like his humor just like breaks up some of the science and some of the monotony and keeps you like really rooting for him the whole time, and like made it even more suspenseful because I'm like, I just love him. So I really enjoyed this. I already have my husband reading it. He has his bookmark on. As soon as I finished it, he was like, I'll read it, because I'm like, let's watch the movie, but I need him to read it first. So I love that one. The next one is Amina's Voice by Hena. And this is a middle grade book. This is about a girl named Amina who is in 6th grade, and her best friend Jenn is from Korea, and she is a Pakistani American, and kind of them in their 6th grade kind of figuring out how they belong in the world. Jenn is going through some things. She's just becoming a citizen, so she's decided she wants to change her name to something more American, and Amina is kind of confused by that because they've always had that in common, that their names were different than other people at their school. And also there's another girl that is kind of joining their friendship circle named Emily, who is like the classic blonde American girl, and so she's kind of feeling a little feelings of jealousy towards how Jenn is making a relationship with this other girl. And there's a lot about Amina's family. She has an uncle that's visiting from Pakistan, and he obviously has not had a lot of experience with America, and kind of the way they are, not that they're neglecting their culture, they very much are into their culture, but they also have adopted some American ways. And so kind of her relationship with her uncle and how he fits into the family as he's visiting. And there's a lot about her like parents and her brother, and there's also a lot of aspects about her religion. So we spent a lot of time at the mosque and learning about Sunday school, and there's parts where we learn a little bit about Islam and her relationship to her faith. And so I just thought it was excellent for what it was. I mean, when I give it a 4.5 stars, it is definitely a middle grade book. Like, I would recommend it for kids like 4th grade to 8th grade, since she's like right in the middle there in 6th grade. But for adults, I would say if you are somebody that likes to read like kind of coming of age stories, then I would recommend it. But it doesn't really transcend the middle grade into like adult kind of interest like a Percy Jackson book might. This is a very like just sweet kind of basic like middle grade book. And even though I loved it, I think it's great for what it is, it might not be for all adults to read. But if you have kids in that age, or are you somebody that enjoys reading, like I said, coming of age, I really did enjoy it. I liked learning more about her faith and culture, because there's a lot in here where they describe that. And what I love is that the author throws in words from other languages. The family speaks Urdu, and then like there's also Arabic words, because at the mosque they're reading the Quran in Arabic. And she doesn't do that thing where sometimes authors will like put out a word in a different language and then immediately explain what that word is, and that bugs me because it doesn't give the reader really time to learn through context, where she doesn't give you the answer right away. She just throws those words in, and you have to use the context clues of the or surrounding sentences to figure out what those mean, or look them up. And so I did a lot of looking up about those words, and I liked that because I could read it without looking it up by the context, but I wanted to learn more about her faith and about her culture. And so it helps the reader to learn more instead of just being force-fed all the information about those words you don't know. So I just love how they flow into the book. So, like I said, I would recommend it for that age, or if you just like a sweet story. And now we're getting into kind of the books I didn't love as much, and this next one will be a little controversial, I think. And the next book is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. And I gave this book 3 stars, which is not really normal. A lot of people really love this. It's like a lot of people's favorite book still. And it's had a lot of hype surrounding it for the past few years. And I understand why people like it, but it just, I didn't think it was that good. I didn't feel like it was 5-star read for me. This I also did a buddy read with Dane Reads and a bunch of other people, and a lot of us in the group had the same feelings. And this is kind of why I didn't love it. And I'm always a little nervous when I read a book that is so hyped, because you get such expectations, and I feel like I was super disappointed based off of everything I'd heard. Like, I don't know if I would have felt differently if I didn't know a ton of stuff going, like, expectations weren't so high going into this book. But really, like, from the very beginning, I was like, oh, I do not like the writing style. Like, the writing was what just bothered me the whole time. It was very choppy. Like, the scenes were, like, very, very short. Let me just see, like, there'll be, like, all these page breaks, like, break, break, break. So the narration just kept being, like, stilted and stopped as I was trying to get into the flow. And then there were also these things, like, bulletins, like, that would come in, and they're just, like, every few pages, there are these bulletins, and it's just the narrator either repeating stuff he's already said or saying stuff that he's about to describe. So it really breaks up the flow for me. I just didn't see any point in having these bulletins thrown in there other than to have some kind of gimmick or something. It's kind of like when you read a magazine and they have the little, like, blurbs that are thrown throughout, and I never read those because all they are just clips from the article that they're highlighting, and that just drives me nuts. They don't go in the flow, and that's what that felt like for me. And I also didn't like that it was narrated by Death. I felt like Death was sometimes omniscient, and so then because of that, we were sometimes seeing inside the heads of people in the book, and then other times he wouldn't know what people were thinking. And then I was like, okay, well, which way is it going to go? So it was kind of confusing, and kind of took me out of the emotion of the story. And I guess I didn't really say what this is about because so many people have read it, but just really brief. It's about this girl, Liesel, who is living in Nazi Germany during the World War II, and she starts stealing books and just, like, develops this relationship with the written word, and during these really hard times. And it's about the people in her town and how they are dealing with living in a Nazi-occupied town. And that part of the book, actually, I really loved. Like, I loved her family. That's why I gave it 3 stars, because I love Liesel. I loved her parents, her papa. Oh my gosh, I just adored him. He was the sweetest man, and he's just, like, the perfect character for this book. I just loved him. Her friend Rudy, the Jewish man that they become friends with, Max. All of those characters I loved, and that's why I didn't DNF the book, and that's also why I didn't give it an even worse rating, because if it had been written in first person, or maybe a simple third person, I think I would have really loved the book. But I just kept getting pulled out. I wanted to be with these characters. I wanted to be in their story and follow them, and then all of a sudden I'd be jerked out, and Death would want to tell me what was happening in like the concentration camps, or what was happening in the war over here. And that really bothered me, because I know what happens in the war. Like, I know what happened in the concentration camps. I know, and it's not like I'm saying that we shouldn't write books about those things. What I'm saying is, if you're writing a book about a particular village and family and what they're going through during the war, that's what I want to stay with. I want to see how the war affects these real people. And then you can write another book about people that are in the concentration camps. But we're not getting any detail about that. We're only, like, getting detail about this family, and then just random, like, overall pictures of what else is happening. And I know what else is happening. I, went to school and I learned all that stuff. I don't need to hear the overarching. I want to follow actual people and hear their story and their feelings, and that was what was great. But it's like every time I got involved and emotional, I just got yanked out. So that by the time we got halfway through the book, I was like, okay, I don't even care anymore. Like, let them all die, whatever. But obviously, like, not really. I didn't really think that, but it just, like, I didn't care anymore about their stories because I just kept getting pulled out of my emotions. And so I did go through till the end and everything, and I still, like, loved the characters, but it just really was devoid of emotion. So I didn't, like, get sad throughout the book or anything because I felt like death took away all need for emotion. Plus, the other thing that really bothered me and almost made it so I didn't read the last part of the book, like, I almost stopped like 70 pages from the end, and that was because Death kept, like, through the whole book, he kept spoiling future deaths. So he would tell us who was gonna die, and I'm like, since he's Death, he knows whether they're gonna die or not, so it's not like a guess. It's like, I'm just gonna tell you what happens at the end of the book or halfway in the book or whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to know at this point who dies. That gives me no emotional attachment to their deaths. And I'm obviously not gonna tell you who dies because I'm not a spoiler, but he spoils his own book. And so I almost just stopped reading because I'm like, well, if I know who dies, why do I care? So that is my feelings. I know I have a little bit of, like, grumpy. Like, I read this at the beginning of the month and I'm still grumpy about it 2 weeks later because I'd really like to watch the movie, but I think I need to get some separation because I'm just so frustrated. Like, ugh, okay. So that's my gripe about that. And you guys are probably going to disagree with me, and that's fine. That's the whole point, is that everybody likes their own thing. That wasn't for me, but it could be for other people, and that's perfectly fine. And now we're going to move on to a book I hated even more, so let's keep going. And that is The Ugly Duckling by Johansen. If you watched one of my videos recently where I talked about how I'm going to reread some of my old favorites, well, this is the first one I have done from that. This book was my favorite book in high school. I probably read it every year, so I think I've read it at least like 4 or 5 times between high school and college, and I loved it. I read it this time. I read it on audiobook, and I was like, what was I thinking? I hated this book now. I mean, I gave it 2 because it had I still had some nostalgia for some of the characters, so I was like, oh, it's not like that horrible, but I definitely will not be reading Johansen anymore as an adult. Like, it's just not my thing. And basically what this is like that classic romantic novel that is like the helpless female is rescued by the mercenary type man. She decides she wants to get revenge on the bad guy, so she asks the mercenary man to teach her how to defend herself. And of course, as they're training and blah blah, they start to build an attraction. It's so tired, and yeah. But I understand, when I'm reading it, I was like, why did I like this? And I understand why, because it's basically my Twilight. Like, you think about how many people, like, love Twilight, but now they're like, oh yeah, it wasn't the greatest writing, it wasn't the greatest story, but they love it. Like, that's what this was for me. Twilight came out way after I was in high school, so I didn't have Twilight to love in high school, so this would have been my Twilight. This would have been my, like, oh, I need that, like, romance that's kind of like the man is mean but sexy and helps the helpless female to be, like, better and blah. Like, it is basically like, other than not supernatural, it's like Twilight for an earlier generation. So if you like that, then go ahead and read it. And I read a lot of her books back then, and they're all pretty much follow the same cookie cutter mold, but I'm not going to say that you shouldn't read them because I just am not into that romance novel thing anymore. It's just not my thing. I prefer to have a little more of a genuine view of how relationships work, where this is very unrealistic form of relationship. But if you're one of those people that likes romance novels, then maybe you should read this. And it does have a little bit of suspense. You might like it. But for me, 2 stars. I will not be going back to that part of my past anymore. So the next book I read was Wires and Nerve, Part 1 by Marissa Meyer. And this is a graphic novel that takes place in the Lunar Chronicles world. And it takes place after winter. And winter is the last major book in the series, so obviously I can't tell you really anything about the plot of this, because anything I tell you, even by telling you who the main character is, could spoil the series for you, because, you know, that whole series relies on a lot of, like, life or death situations, and I wouldn't want to tell you who lives and who dies, because that would kind of spoil it. So I'm not going to tell you who this is about, but I will tell you that I Gave it a 3-star rating. I thought it was good in the fact that we got to revisit some of the characters I loved, got to see them drawn out, and so I got to visualize them and everything, and some of the settings. So that part I really enjoyed. The plot was fun, but it just didn't really have the intensity that the books do. I don't know if that's just because of the format, or if it's just because, you know, like, we've already gone through the whole series, and so there's not as much tension needing to build up at this point. But I did enjoy revisiting those characters and revisiting the world, so I will continue and read part 2, and I would recommend it if you really enjoyed and want to see those characters again in a different light and see them drawn out. Great, but it's not up to the caliber of the books, in my opinion, but still cute and fun. And the next book I read was Starry Eyes by Jenn Bennett. And this one I gave a 4 stars to. This is a YA contemporary about Zori, who is a girl, I think she's a junior, and it's the summer, and her mom wants her to go on this camping trip with this kind of popular girl, and at the same time, she has this neighbor that they used to have a relationship. We don't know everything about what happened with them, but they're not talking anymore. His name is Lennon, and like, them end up both on this camping trip, basically. So you can kind of guess things that are going to happen from there. I gave this 4 stars because, for me, a book that revolves around romance in a camping setting is like my ideal romance book, because I used to work in camping, like, from the age of like 16 till I was 30. I was working at camps. I used to do it full time in my 20s, and so being outdoors and having kind of romance in the outdoors is totally my thing. I mean, I met my husband at a camp. We broke up while we worked at camp. We got back together while we were working at camp. So, like, basically our entire romance has been like a romantic comedy at camp. So when I heard that this was involved camping in some way, I was like, yes, my thing. And though it's not like at a camp, like where my husband and I would have worked, it's like backpacking through, I don't remember where they're at. They're at one of the national parks. I can't remember which one. So they're like doing, first they're starting out glamping, and they're also doing like a backcountry trip in a national park. And so there's still that outdoor element. There's still the like tents and like the fire and the stars and all that kind of cute romantic stuff. So of course I loved it. And the reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because at the beginning it was kind of slow for me, because they didn't end up at the campground until about 80 pages in. So the first 80 pages, when they're just kind of at home and it's all teen angsty, wasn't really like my favorite part of the book. I was like, ugh, when are we gonna get to the camping? And then once they were out in the outdoors, awesome. Like, the plot was great. The like relationship between Zori and Lennon was really like nice. How they built on, we kind of learned more about their history and then like what they were going through in this current situation. And I just thought it was adorable, and I would recommend it, especially if you're somebody that likes the outdoors. And they do a lot of like talking about the scenery, and that just like, I love it, and it makes me want to go on a backpacking trip with my husband right now. Awesome. Alright, and then the last book, because I know I'm kind of babbling on, is Simon versus the Homosapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I gave this a 5 stars. I loved it. And I'm sure a lot of people already know what this is. It's about Simon, who he's gay, but he hasn't come out to his family or his friends yet. But he's starting to have kind of like an online relationship with a boy. They're going by code names, so he doesn't know who this boy is. But somebody else sees their email exchange and decides to blackmail Simon. And so basically it's all of his coming out and like how he's dealing with all of that. And then kind of like the mystery of who is Blue, who is the guy that he is talking to. And I just thought it was absolutely adorable. Like, yes, there's some teen angst in this, but it's like the cute, like, romancy teen angst that I love. And the emails between Simon and Blue are just like so sweet, and it just gave me the little butterflies reading their email exchanges. I just like, oh, so cute. I just loved it. And I also, what I love about this is that it's not just about relationships, like the romance, like part relationship, but it's also about his relationships to his friends and his family. So we learn a lot about what his family does in their spare time, how they interact with each other, like him and his sisters and their like growth in their relationships, and about his group of friends. We really get to know his friends, and I just loved all of it. I thought it was really cute and happy, and yeah, I really adored it. I know that there's the sequel or companion novel, Leon the Offbeat, and I don't think I'm going to read it. I know people would say, well, you gave it 5 stars, why not? But truthfully, Leah was my least favorite character in this book. I think she's a little too brash? Nah, you know what I mean. Like, she's a little too grumpy. I don't know what to say. She's just not like my favorite type of character to be the main character. Like, it was fine as the side character, but I don't really want to follow that like negative attitude through an entire book, because that's just not my thing. Like, I'm a very happy person, and that probably would just annoy me to follow her for an entire book. So I will just stick to this one, and you never know, maybe I might try in the future, but for the most part, I just really love Simon. So we'll just stick with this, and this can stay in my beautiful world. So that's it. Those are the 9 books I read so far this month. I'm sure I won't have this many the second half, but who knows, because I'm already in the middle of 2 audiobooks and 2 regular books and 1 ebook, so I don't know how many I'm going to have by the end of the month, so we'll probably do another big wrap-up then. If you have any thoughts about these books, go ahead and put them down below. I'd love to hear what you had to say, because like I said, everybody has their own opinion, and I'm perfectly fine having a different opinion as other people. We can just talk about it and still have happy talk, even though we might like something that the other person doesn't, or not like something that somebody else does like. So that's life, and that's fun. Okay, it was good to have you here, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.